Okay, ich denke, auch wenn es noch nicht 10:30 Uhr ist, ihr seid alle schon voller Spannung hier in der Bühne zum Hof. Vielleicht noch ein, zwei organisatorische Dinge auch hier. Also wie gesagt, da sind die Getränke. Gerne auch drinnen. Danke. Das ist übrigens die Juliana, unsere gute Seele hier. Wenn ihr irgendwas braucht, euch was fehlt, Rolf hat schon gesagt, schwarze Kärtchen, hier in der Bühne wird Juliana hier sein und ich. Mein Name ist Olli Nachtrab. Ich moderiere heute den Produkttrack hier, bin selber wie Rolf auch im Bereich Produktmanagement und Trainings und Coachings tätig und ich freue mich drauf, euch durch den Tag oder zumindest den Vormittag begleiten zu können. Wir starten immer pünktlich um 10:30 Uhr, 11:30 Uhr, 12:30 Uhr mit den Sessions. Die Vorträge sind immer so circa eine halbe Stunde und danach werden wir in die Speakers Corner gehen, beziehungsweise wer möchte, dann weiter diskutieren zu dem Thema vor dem Vortrag mit dem Speaker. Da haben wir dann immer noch knapp eine halbe Stunde Zeit, bevor der nächste Vortrag mit ankommt. So, das ist eigentlich mal so viel zum Organisatorischen. Da würde ich mich dann auch ganz schnell wieder von der Bühne machen. Wenngleich wir hier so eine deutsche Konferenz sind im Hamburger Norden, ihr hört es vielleicht schon, ich bin selbst kein Hamburger, ich komme eher aus dem Süden. Ja, deswegen ist auch bei mir nicht das Moin, sondern eher das Servus angesagt. Nichtsdestotrotz sind wir heute international auch mit unseren Vorträgen und wir haben auch die Speaker gebeten, in der Sprache die Vorträge zu halten, wie es für sie am besten und komfortabelsten ist. Jock, unser erster Speaker heute, wird seinen Vortrag in Englisch machen, versteht aber besser Deutsch, als er es zugibt. Für euch dann auch, wenn ihr dann später Fragen habt, also ich denke, dass das Englisch kein Problem ist, ihr könnt jederzeit natürlich später dann auch bei den Fragen sowohl Englisch als auch Deutsch die Fragen mitstellen. Der Vortrag jetzt wird aber in Englisch lauten. Den Vortrag, den wir jetzt hören von Jock, ist What does a Product Manager do and not do? Ich glaube, einer der Punkte und Themen, die für uns alle im Produktmanagement immer eine wichtige Rolle spielen. Letztes Jahr hatten wir dazu auch Sessions draußen. Was mache ich eigentlich als Produktmanager, was ist die Rolle von mir, von Product Owner, von Vertrieb, wo grenze ich mich ab? Und ich freue mich drauf, heute von Jock entsprechend die Präsentation zu hören und dann später mit Sicherheit auch noch viele weitere Diskussionen. Jock, I hand over to you now, and so switching over to English, and thanks for coming, showing up. We are really happy to have you here in beautiful Hamburg. So, and the stage is yours.
Okay, so thank you very much for coming today on this beautiful morning. I will be speaking in English. If I'm speaking too quickly or if anything isn't clear, just shout and it's not a problem and I will hopefully make myself more easily understood. So today we're going to be talking about what a product manager does and doesn't do, and that seems fairly straightforward, but I think it's one of those questions that many of us end up having when we become product managers, because hands up, how many of you are product managers? Oh, brilliant, fantastic. And how many of you knew what the role was before you got the role? Exactly, yeah. Many people I've spoken to, many product managers I've known, have become product managers. They've turned up one morning, congratulations, you are a product manager. And what is this? So hopefully this will answer some of those questions. The talk will be about 30 minutes, I think, and then afterwards there will be time for questions, and I will be here because I'm giving a workshop in the afternoon, so feel free to come up, have a chat. If there's any questions or anything you'd like to talk about in product management, please do feel free. Okay, thank you very much. Oh, one thing I have to do, one thing. Smile. Okay. Very important. Why am I standing up on the stage in front of you? So I've been a freelance head of product, so I work with lots of different companies, and I've been doing that for about 7 years now through my own company. So I work with startups, I work with big companies, I help them out with their product management, and that could either be through being hands-on product management or through helping the management team build a product team, recruit, consult, and then train and mentor the people as we go along. I've also written a book, if you're interested, and there's more about kind of how I became a product manager and what I've learned over the years in that. I've had a chance to work with a few companies, a few big names on there. The interesting one actually is the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism, because we've just published a digital news report just yesterday, and this is the 7th year of running of that as well. And this is essentially a report into how people consume news on their phones or on the internet or in print, and it's kind of some interesting things about fake news and how much we trust news and that kind of thing. But it's an interesting report that was just published today. So let's start. A few questions for you to make sure you are all awake and listening. What is a product? Maybe let's make it an easier question. Why do people get a mortgage for their house? Is it because they want to have an affordable rate of interest, or because they want to have affordable monthly payments? Not really. Most people who want a mortgage is because they want to stop paying rent, or because they want to live closer to where they work, or because they need more space to start a family, perhaps. So the difference here is that a product is not about the features. It's not about what it does and what capabilities it has. A product is more about what it allows people to do, what goals it allows them to achieve. And typically, these goals are things that matter most to them. Okay? So when we're thinking of products, we're thinking of anything that really solves a user problem, addresses some kind of need, helps the user to achieve a goal. But most importantly, the product is not the important thing. Okay? And that's kind of a difficult thing maybe to think about as a product manager. What you are creating is not the important thing. The important thing is what the product allows people to do. Okay? And that's something that's very, very important to keep track of. So when we're thinking of the product, it's the sum of a number of different things. It's not just the thing you build. The product could be digital, it could be physical, it could even be a service like training or some other personal service. But typically, you are building the core product, the thing itself. But actually, you're responsible for much more than that. You're responsible for something, a concept known as the whole product. And what that essentially means is, apart from the thing you build, there's usually complementary additional pieces that you need to have to unlock the value of the product. So let's give you an example. So here's my smartphone, and this is a product, yeah? It is a piece of hardware. It's got components in it. A product manager had to decide with their team on the design, on the capabilities, on the specification, the look, the feel, all that kind of thing. But without a SIM card, without a contract, without any apps, without any data, this won't really do anything. So, as a product manager, I'm responsible not just for the phone, but for ensuring that the apps, the data, the phone contracts, the SIM card are all also available and compatible and working well with this product to unlock the value. Okay? Now, this is the tricky part because you're not necessarily in control of all of those other elements directly, but as product manager, you're still responsible for ensuring that all of those pieces of the puzzle fit together nicely. Okay? So that's a difficult one already. We're already having to be in charge of things that are not necessarily in our direct control. Okay, so that's what is a product. So what is product management? Well, that's what I'm here to answer, but well, there are a number of different ways of looking at it, and I think one of the difficult things about product management is that I think it's changed quite a lot over the years. maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago when I started working in technology, product management was very much a process. It was very much a, if you do these things in this particular order, and if you do the launch in this particular way, and if you develop the product in this particular way, then you should have a good product. And now it's kind of changed much more into a focus on what is important and how do we know that what we are creating is going to be successful. So product management has very much evolved over the years. So some good places to start are Marty Kagan's book, which is called Inspired. Obviously, my book hopefully will shed some light on this as well, but also another excellent book by Martin Erickson, Richard Banfield, and I think C. Todd Lombardo. Nate Walkingshaw, apologies, about product leadership, which I think is all about saying, well, product management is one thing, here's what the next level above that is, here's how to actually work with people and influence leadership within an organization. So I think that book in particular is a very good one if you've already been a product manager for a while. So Marty Kagan says the job of the product manager is to identify the smallest, the simplest, smallest product that satisfies the user need, whilst also being valuable, usable, and feasible. So valuable, it has to have value for the user. It has to be useful. It has to solve a problem that matters. It has to be usable. So you can be solving the best problem in the world, but if you do it very badly and in a way that's very difficult to use, then clearly nobody's going to use your product. And it also has to be feasible. So we're thinking about, from a business perspective, is it possible to solve that problem cost effectively in a way that actually will create a sustainable or a profitable business? Okay? So our job is to kind of create a product that meets those three criteria, whilst also doing this as quickly as possible. Another way of looking at it is Martin Erickson's view. So he thinks of it in terms of the intersection of several different areas of interest or discipline. So he says it's the intersection between the business, the organization you work with, the technology you're working with and what's possible with that technology, and most importantly, the user experience. So not just UX in inverted commas, but the user experience, how the user works with your product, how the user experiences your product, how you as an organization interact with your customers and your users. And he summarizes it in this kind of diagram, this Venn diagram. And he says that essentially you as a product manager are right here in the middle. Now, there's a few things to take away from this. Excuse me. So first of all, we're only looking at the piece in the middle, okay? So rather than saying we are the entire puzzle, we have to be good at all of these areas and experts in everything, we're saying we're at the middle, we're at the intersection. We're not saying we're experts in everything, we're saying we're generalists. And the objective as a product manager is not to become the expert in every single discipline, because that would take you a lifetime. You'd have to have a whole lifetime's worth of experience in design, a whole lifetime's experience worth as a developer, a whole lifetime's experience in user research. Clearly, we can't all become experts in each of these areas. But what Martin says is he says a good product manager should be experienced in at least one, because everyone comes from somewhere. Everyone has some background experience in one area. But they should be passionate about all of the areas and be able to have a conversation with experts and practitioners in all these areas. So in other words, I don't necessarily need to be able to code in Python, but I should be able to have a sensible conversation with my developers to make sure that the approach they're taking is the right one based on what we're trying to achieve with the product. Similarly, I don't need to be necessarily an expert in how to gather user research in an unbiased and statistically significant way. However, I do need to be able to have a conversation with my user researcher to make sure that we're using that information well and building the appropriate product based on that research. Okay? So we should be able to have a conversation with these practitioners, not necessarily an expert in each of those areas. But my route into product management was slightly indirect. I started off in the very technical subjects of Latin and ancient Greek, which had absolutely no bearing at all on my chosen career. I then somehow managed to get a job in a company called Zeus, which was about the only tenuous connection with Greek mythology I could find. And then I managed to find my way through that startup through a number of different roles into product management. So what we're really saying here is that there's no one way to get into product management. I think by definition, we all start somewhere. We all have a particular background, and whether your background is design, research, project management, sales, development, or whatever else, everyone comes to product management in their own route. But the important thing here is that you've at least had some experience in each of these areas. If you find that you've not got if you find you have gaps in your experience, it's a really good idea to try and find ways to sit with people, to work with people in those areas, so at least you can gain an understanding of what is easy, what is difficult, what is possible, what kind of considerations they're making when they're thinking about how to solve the problems you're setting them. So do try and fill those gaps out in your experience if you've not necessarily had the chance to do so already. So what do we actually do then? So I was asked this question when I was managing a team in government. So in the UK government, I was working for the Ministry of Justice. And you wouldn't think necessarily that the Ministry of Justice would have much in the way of product, but as it happened, they were looking to turn all of their paper-based processes into much simpler, easier to understand online digital processes. So for example, if you had to pay a court fine because you'd been caught speeding in your car, then making the process for paying that speeding ticket much easier to do online, as opposed to having to fill in 27 pages of paper form. So I think to be a product manager, you do need quite a diverse range of technical skills. And I appreciate the writing is very small. I will share the slides after the talk on SlideShare. So it's everything from all aspects of the product lifecycle, from figuring out what it is you're going to create in the first place, all the way through to launching the product and then sustaining the product when it's in the market. But these technical skills are okay because we can learn these, we can pick these up, you can read books, we can attend training courses. And that's relatively easy to learn the technical skills. What I think is much harder for a product manager to learn, if you don't already have them, are what's called the soft skills, the people skills, the emotional skills. And I think there's quite a few. There's the ability to influence without authority, the ability to motivate and to lead a team of people when it's going well and also when it's not going so well. It's important to be able to look at the perspective of what it is we're trying to achieve now and what it is we're trying to achieve in the future. But I think above all, there's two characteristics of a product manager which are the most important. And those, I think, are empathy and communication. And empathy is that ability to see things from the perspective of your users, to appreciate and understand what are their problems, as opposed to simply trying to solve your own problems or your team's problems. And the second most important aspect is communication. As a product manager, you are taking information in from your team, you are feeding information out both to your team, to stakeholders, to your customers, to your users, and so on. So you are always this conduit. There's information flowing through you all the time. And your ability to communicate effectively is really, really, really important. You need to be able to choose the right way of talking to people. You need to choose the right words to talk to people. And half of that is really about understanding who it is you're talking to and having empathy with them. So for example, you as the audience, I am trying to think about all of those talks I've been to where I didn't enjoy it, I was bored, the speaker was difficult to understand, and I'm trying to make sure that I avoid doing those things with you. So I'm trying to give you slides with relatively few words on them. I'm making sure the writing is big so you can see it, even when you're far away from the screen. I'm trying to speak in a way that hopefully you can understand without me speaking too quickly. Because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand your needs as an audience, not just to be informed, but hopefully maybe to be entertained a little bit as well, hopefully. So if you think about that when you're communicating, whether you're doing a one-to-one, whether you're doing your stand-up, whether you're presenting to your managers about your roadmap or whatever else, think about what it is they need from you and try and adapt how you communicate accordingly. So, as we've been saying, a product manager is a generalist. they may have a particular specialism. So in my case, I happen to start out in networking, so I know a little bit about how networks work. But beyond that, I don't know anything about any of the new development frameworks. If you told me to go and develop an app on Spring, I wouldn't have a clue. The point being is that you have got some experience somewhere because everyone started somewhere. But what we do have is this general set of experience, this generalist approach. So it's what's called a sort of T-shaped person. And what we're doing is we're working with a team of specialists. We're leading and guiding a team of people who are experts in all these different areas. And they have different skill sets and different approaches, and hopefully they come together as a team that works as effectively as the Avengers. One of the other things that is quite difficult for a product manager to do is to balance possibly competing needs between the users, the people who are actually using your product, and the business, which is primarily there to, make money or sustain itself, and to please shareholders and so on and so forth, because that's the nature of how things work. And those things are not always aligned. So again, it can be a tricky balance to make sure that you're striking the right approach. I would always personally bias towards addressing user needs over the needs of the business, because if you have no users, you cannot sell your product, you have no business. So you have to really focus on the people who are using your product and ensure you're meeting those needs. And then secondarily, look at the how you can satisfy the needs of the business as well. But clearly, we cannot create a product that is losing money hand over fist. We have to make sure that the model works. So these are the things that we do. What are the things that we don't do? Well, we're not a project manager. We're not a program manager either. We're not just the product owner. And I appreciate this is an entire talk in itself. And if you search for product owner versus product manager, you'll find thousands and thousands of articles. But when we're thinking about product owner, the product owner typically was defined as a very specific role in Scrum, which is a particular methodology in Agile. Okay? And if you literally did only the things that the Scrum guide tells you to do as a product owner, then you would never leave the building. You would never talk to users or customers. You'd never conduct any research. You'd never conduct any external testing, because all you'd be doing is grooming the backlog, doing stand-ups, prioritizing the backlog, and you'd never do anything else. And I go to places where genuinely that is all they think a product manager does, and that's kind of missing the point. There's also the situation where if you have too few product managers in an organization and you're running several teams, just the role of that aspect can take up all of your time because you're managing several teams worth of stuff. And again, that's something that probably needs to be changed. You need to be able to divide up that role or that workload between several people. So you're not just a product owner. There's everything else you need to do, and quite a lot of that is people-based. You've got to talk to stakeholders. You've got to be thinking about the strategy. You've got to be helping and understanding the research that's going to take you in the direction you need to go with your product. So it is, yes, it does encompass the things you need to do as a product owner, but it's much, much, much more than that. You're not the tweak the website person. You're not sales support. You're not the chief QA tester. You're not tech support. You're not the person who does the spreadsheets. In other words, you are not a replacement for the specialists that are missing from your team. If you need someone to be doing reporting and analytics, get an analytics person. If you need someone to be doing testing or technical support, get someone to do the technical support and the testing. Okay? The point being is you have enough on your plate already as a product manager, just simply running your product, leading your team, and making sure you're building the right product without trying to do all these other roles. But of course, we know what happens, okay? Because generally, product managers are pretty good at doing these different things. Of course, the organizer says, well, we don't need to hire someone else. You can do it because you're really good at it. Come on, you're really good at it, come on. And you go, all right then. And then you find out next week you're doing all of the spreadsheets, you're doing all of the reporting, and you don't have time to talk to people anymore. Okay? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we carve out time to do our actual job and try not to spend all our time doing effectively other people's jobs. So that's hopefully an understanding of what we do and what we don't do. So why do we need product management in the first place? Well, the first thing is that it's difficult to keep track of what our users need. If you think about 10, 15 years ago, social media didn't exist really in any meaningful way. Okay? So, we've now got this whole realm of product features and concepts that never even existed, and this will obviously continue. Think about how AI is impacting on, machine learning is impacting on all of our products in the same way as data, big data, in inverted commas, impacted on us a few years ago. And user needs evolve. The fact that every single picture on here is now solved by your phone just gives you an indication of how things change. And it's not that any of these products necessarily failed as such. They were all needed at the time. But what people needed from those products evolved. It moved on. It moved beyond what those products were capable of. Let's take Blockbuster Video, for example. In the 90s, and early 2000s, the way to see your films at home was to rent out a VHS video or later rent out a DVD. Then, later on, Netflix and others came along with mail order kind of, videos or DVDs they sent to you in the post, okay? And then that was replaced by streaming. So user needs have evolved, but it wasn't that people wanted to be streaming in the first place. All they wanted was quality films, accessed conveniently, without having to pay a fine if it was late. And that's what killed off the rental business, not the fact that it was Blockbuster or anything else. Netflix started out as sending physical copies of the DVDs out before they started streaming. So the point being was the user needs evolved. We wanted something different, we wanted something more, we wanted something more convenient. And that is what caused these products and these companies that didn't evolve to fail. So think about what makes a good product. Think about products that annoyed you. Poor old grumpy cat. When you think about products that annoyed you, what was it that annoyed you about them? Okay? What kind of things, did you feel not work for you? Was it inconvenient? Was it difficult to use? Was it not really connecting with your needs? Was it not understanding what you were trying to do as a person? Did it make you jump through the process of someone else rather than fitting in with your own process, your natural way of working? Then think about products that delighted you. When you've had to tell someone how great a product was, what was it about it that you told them? Was it perhaps the customer service? Was it perhaps the ease of use? Was it perhaps the convenience it had? All of these different things. So really what we're looking for is the special sauce that creates a good product. And so these typical things are going to be attention to detail. In other words, really and truly understanding your needs. It'd be, for example, solving your problems before you even knew you had them. Truly understanding your needs as an individual, as opposed to generalizing. But most of all, treating you like a human being. Someone who is trying to achieve something. Someone who's just trying to live their lives with the minimum of extra aggravation. Yeah? So going back to working in government, many of these products that we were creating, these services, were things that people didn't necessarily want to have to use, but when they did have to use them, they didn't want it to be painful. So all we were trying to do in their lives was to minimize the additional pain and difficulty in their lives when they had to apply for a court order or apply for a new passport or things like that, okay? Because people don't want to necessarily do those things by choice. They have to do them. Users always have a choice. And if your product doesn't meet their needs, they will either use someone else's product, even if it does a worse job. They will choose not to use your product altogether. And in some cases, that can be problematic. So for example, again, if somebody is too scared to log on to change their passport or update their driving license, then that's a problem because they could be opening themselves up to legal difficulties in the future. So we want to make sure that we give them the option that's the least painful of the ones available, including doing nothing at all. So let's think about the characteristics that make a good product manager. And this is a difficult one because I think what it means to be a good product manager gets harder every day. First of all, we need to leave our ego at the door. It's not about you. Sorry. It's not about the thing you create. The products, you may invest time, blood, sweat, and tears into creating these products, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's just another product. So it's not about you. It's not about the product. Oops. Is it going to work? Let's try again. There we go. Guesses and assumptions, putting the solution before the problem, will lead to failure, usually. So we need to make sure that we're not guessing what the product should be. We're actually evaluating the data and research that we have and making sure that we're using that to inform our approach. We can't be the kind of person that gets up in the morning and in our shower thinks, I've had a brilliant idea for our product. That's what your boss does. That's what you need to stop doing. And the way we do this is we make everything an experiment. So in this case, data and user research shows us that users don't like typing passwords on their mobile phone. So if we try sending them an email with a one-time password and measure the time to log in on mobile and also user stress when logging in, we should see this change. And this is the measurable difference that we're trying to achieve. So what we've done is we've created a very small experiment. And every single thing that we do should be based on this kind of idea. Everything is an experiment. In product management, it's all about people. It's not about actually the technology. It's not about managing the products. It's all about the people. So maybe 10% is technology, but 90% of your job is actually about managing people, whether it's your stakeholders, your team, your customers, your users, whoever. And as we said, the needs of your team and of your stakeholders are not necessarily aligned with those of your users. So you find yourself being pulled often in many different directions, and this is challenging. So as a product manager, your job is to align the team. Your job is to get everyone to be working towards a goal, your vision for the product. With no vision, everyone will pull in different directions. With a far-off goal in mind that people care about, people will be drawn towards it. We also need to be good at dividing our thinking between the short term and the long term, between the detail and the big picture. But we also need to use different sides of our brain. We need to be creative when we need to be. We need to be analytical when we need to be. So we're always kind of jumping around different ways of thinking and working. So all of that is the good aspects of product management. However, product management can also be challenging. We're the people who run towards the fire. We have to figure out what the problems are in our team, in our products. We need to respond to them. We need to make sure that we can keep moving forward. We need to keep the team calm. We need to address any difficulties that come up, because they always do. They always do. We need to keep several plates spinning at a time. And that is often one of the hardest pieces, to be able to make that context switch day in, day out between different products, different features, different needs of different people. But I think another aspect which is very difficult for us at the moment is what is to be a good product manager means. It also means to be an ethical product manager. So this is itself a very big topic, but just think about this Google Duplex demo that you might have seen last year and then a bit more recently. So this was a Google AI-driven personal assistant phoning up to make an appointment at a hair salon. And the way it spoke, the way it interacted with the human being was very lifelike. It even made, ums and paused and those kind of natural language things that human beings do and machines typically don't. And my problem with that was not that it was a massive leap forward in technology, but the fact that the person on the end of the line did not know they were talking to a machine. Okay? And so if we think about that and the implications of that and how this technology could be used or abused, we have to start asking the question, not just should we create something, can we create something, but should we create something? In other words, just because it is possible to create this technology doesn't necessarily mean it is an ethically good idea to do so. Just imagine that technology being used to make millions of sales calls automated. Then you can start to see the problems that this kind of technology could create inadvertently. So try and consider how your product could be misused or abused. And you can't anticipate every possible way it could happen, but think about avoiding the obvious things. Think about data security, privacy. Think about keeping your users safe. In other words, do no harm, like the doctors. Okay, so let's recap. A product manager is at the center of user experience, the needs of the organization, and of technology. A product manager is someone who collaborates with your avenging team of specialists. A good product manager manages the people, but also considers the ethics of their product. Is this a good idea? Is this going to do no harm to my users? So, thank you very much. Thank you for listening.